All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the April What's New in Cumulocity webinar update. We're very happy to have so many people logged on from around the world. Um, just a few housekeeping items, and then I'll turn things over to our PM and ecosystem teams. Um, one thing, just in case you didn't notice, on the right under the Docs tab, there are a few additional resources, a link to a blog post and a product release notes page that might be of interest to you. So make sure you check those out if you're interested. Um, Second, just in terms of a housekeeping item, as we go through, we're going to go through a series of sections related to different product areas within Cumulocity, and at the end of every section, we'll break for questions. So as you have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. You also have the option of raising your hand, and then you can come on stage to ask your question verbally, which might work a little bit better if there might be some follow-ups or it's a more complicated question. So feel free to take advantage of that option also. And the final thing I just wanted to mention is at the end, we will have just a brief survey. We want to make sure we're obviously going to continue doing these webinars on a quarterly basis, and we want to make sure that there is valuable for you, and we're covering the topics that are meaningful to all of you. So please, if you can fill out that survey at the end, that would be great. And now we can go ahead and I'll turn things over to Nicholas Neuberg, our Senior Director of Product Management, to get us kicked off and take it away. Take it away, Nico.
Thanks a lot, Alex. So I'm very thrilled that so many of you could make it today and take out a piece of your day to learn about the latest and greatest Cumulocity features. So a very brief reminder on this webinar. So this is the second time we do the quarterly product news webinar. And this session is specifically designed to everybody who is using Cumulocity hands-on. So it doesn't matter whether you're a power user building dashboards, creating real-time logic, managing devices, or a developer writing code to extend Cumulocity. And what we will be covering is we will both show you the new features that we have added since 1st of January, so throughout the quarter, but we will also give you a small peek behind the curtain, and the product teams will also share a bit what they're currently working on. And today also Stefan will give a bit of an update on recent open source innovations that the Cumulocity team has been working about. And what makes this webinar very special is that you have direct access to the product experts. So please make use of the Q&A functionality. We look forward to your questions, and we believe that this is one of the most valuable parts of this webinar, that we can directly have a discussion and answer your question. You can even come on stage and share your question live. Okay, given that there are quite a few new faces here, I do a promised very short overview about what is Cumulocity IoT about in essence, and then we get right into the what's new content. So Cumulocity at the heart simplifies IoT by focusing on 6 essential capabilities, starting from device connectivity. We can connect virtually any equipment to the cloud through our SynEdge device agents that Ruben will talk about, device SDKs, and a lot of plug-and-play devices from our partner ecosystem. We then help you with device management to manage and monitor and update your fleet of devices, make sure that your devices are securely integrated. This is something that Aaron will be talking about. And then we help you structure your IoT data in a way that your business teams, that your developers, and also your applications can take value out of it. And you can use that to build your own applications and visualizations with Cumulocity, or you can use external tools like your field service management solution to leverage the IoT data, or even AI agents that you have accessible through Cumulocity. Next on is then analytics. That is where we close the loop back to the equipment. You can operationalize the insights that you have gained through the IoT data, and, for example, change the parameterization of your device when needed. And all of that we do offer, of course, in the cloud, but also you are free to deploy Cumulocity IoT locally on what we call with the Cumulocity Edge. You get the entire Cumulocity platform for a local industrial PC installation or just an installation on any local Kubernetes cluster. Having said that, in the next minutes, I will only share one general update and then hand over to Rahul an application enablement update, and then we go basically through the capability I just explained and share a bit about what is new in each area. One update I'm quite excited about, thanks to Stefan, who's also here. We now have moved our changelog from the previous changelog page into the tech community. At the moment, starting from today, both changelogs are live. So you will see that we have two changelogs, once as part of our documentation as before, and once as part of the tech community. We wait a bit for a couple of weeks for your feedback, but then we move the entire changelogs to the tech community. And we have done this mainly because of feedback from people who are live and listening here, so that you, for example, get the ability to get notified on changes. So you can use the new changelog to set filters. Which product area are you interested about? Which type of changes are you interested about? Fixes or new features, and can use the tech community functionality to easily subscribe to changes or even only announcement. The changelog is also much easier to search. That is also feedback we got, that it's often difficult to find. And one thing that specifically many of you asked for is you also get more technical details. Concretely, you will get the build artifact and build version. That is very important for developers building on top of Cumulocity, with which this change has been introduced. And now you will also see a list of the environments, the public cloud environments, where this change has already been rolled out to. So in the past, we only showed the change as soon as it became available on our first public cloud instances. Now you can see the list of instances that this change has been rolled out to. So give it a try, go to tech community, go to the new changelog category, and you can see all the changelogs. You can even comment on them or also leave feedback from us or ask clarifying questions. With having said that, I'm now handing over to Rahul, who will continue with an update on application enablement.
Thanks, Nico. So I'll be continuing with the updates we have done into the application enablement area of Cumulocity. So in the previous quarter, we had introduced a UI component for the exporting of IoT data. This UI component has been now integrated with the data point table widget. Data point table widget was also something which we had kind of revamped and introduced a new version of it in the last quarter. This now gets the another update where we have integrated this export component. Utilizing this, you will be now able to export the IoT data available in the widget in CSV or XLS format. You have two formats over here. You can either have a full export, which allows you to export minimum, I think, 1 million records per data point, or even you can have an compact export, which allows you to export a shorter number of data points. The data point explorer is also being upgraded in this current version. We have been migrating a few of the capabilities in our platform from AngularJS to Angular, and this time we are coming up with a preview version of the data point explorer. With this migration, not only we get the performance improvement, but we also get a refreshed UI and as well as more number of configurations options so that you can visualize your data with more efficiency. Instead of speaking more about the feature, I would now like to actually directly show this feature live to you. Perfect. So in this quarter, we have introduced a preview version of the Data Point Explorer. The new Data Point Explorer allows you to create your own data point configurations. We are now calling this as workspace. Users can create as many as number of workspace into their setup. These workspace are stored locally into their browsers. So you can create as many as number of them. You can duplicate them. You can reuse any of them. And when you try to kind of work around the Data Point Explorer, the data points you select, the alarms you select get stored into this configuration. Once you have kind of created a final version of it, you can also share these workspaces with your team members. So the whole configuration of these workspaces is stored. I mean, it's available in the URL. When you share this with your colleagues, they also get the same configuration, which again get stored into their local storage. Apart from this, the whole UI has been refreshed. You now have much better overview of the data points you are able to see. We have also introduced a new way of highlighting the alarms which have occurred. So if you now have an option of selecting if you would like to see the alarms with the data points, and if you click on the line displaying the alarm, you also see the details directly into the graph itself. Apart from this, we have also revamped the way you used to select the alarm. So the alarm and event selector has been replaced with a new selector. The selector fetches the number of like the last 2000 alarms and identifies the unique alarm types, which makes it easy for you to select the alarms. Apart from this, the same export component which I just highlighted has been also integrated into this this view. You can select the date for which you want to export the data, and similarly select the mode and then export the data into your system. Apart from this, not only the data point explorer, the same benefits have been the same features have been also added into the data point graph widget. So the whole view which you just noticed is also exactly similar way available into the data point graph widget. Same as the data point explorer, you get more configuration options into the graph view also. Some other extra features which available over here are that you can very easily enable, disable certain data points directly from the view in the graph itself. Another interesting update over here is the slider. So this is also something similarly available in the data point explorer, but in the in this view, in the dashboards, you can see that the when you are trying to view the data for the last day, the slider actually displays the data for the last 1 month, and you can see the dips, the where some so depending on the parameter you have selected, you can identify the type of dips you want to explore, and you can simply slide back to that area. Another announcement in this area is that when you change the selector, not only the graph you are working upon, the other the widgets also gets refreshed with the time you are selecting here. So this makes it very easy for you to analyze your data in all the widgets across the whole dashboard. So this has been also introduced into preview mode. For activating both the functionalities, you would need to utilize any of your custom applications, preferably the cloned version of the cockpit application. So when you clone the cockpit application, you can in the plugins tab. In the plugins tab, you will notice this install plugins button. When you open that plugin button, you can search the data point graph, and you will be able to notice both the widgets here, which you can then install. Another enhancements which we have done exactly in the same view is until now, developers were able to create their plugins, distribute their plugins, but there was no way of kind of archiving their plugins. So with this release, we have also enabled a new I will say functionality, so where you can also archive your plugins. So in the same view, you will now be able to notice a new filter option where you can decide that if you want to see the archive packages or not. Once selected, the developers who, let's say, plans to stop supporting a specific extension can now also archive them, and then they appear over here with archive tag, and they're not by default visible, which means that if you're not maintaining them, they might not be compatible with the applications and hence won't appear. But if you want to try out those functionalities, the plugins are still available, and a proper warning is displayed to the users where they kind of get to know that the plugin might not be maintained and might work or might not. So this has been also enhanced in the last quarter. For both the data point explorer and data point graph, I have also created a tech community article where you will be able to find the enhancements we have done in both the sections, and very specifically how you can install and try out these both the features. Both the features are right now in public preview, so we will wait for feedback from our customers and then make these feature part of the product. One another enhancement which we have introduced in the last quarter is that we have now introduced a default asset model for groups. So until now, users were utilizing groups for maintaining their hierarchy. And with the introduction of Digital Twin Manager, concepts of assessed were introduced, using which you could have modeled your whole hierarchy. Groups have now also been given a default asset model without changing any functionality of the groups. So groups still maintain their whole functionality. They can still be nested into each other. But with this update, the enhancement you get is that you can now rename the concept. So you can name it as folder, you can name it as device group, or you can name it in any way. Another enhancement is that you can now also decide the icon you want to assign to the groups, which was not possible, easily possible earlier. In the last quarter, I had shared the update that we have introduced DTM plugins. So these are the plugins, official plugins, where the functionalities around assets have been introduced, and these are available officially, and these will be also utilized by other default applications. With this change, I highlighted around introducing the default asset model for groups. We have also modified all the assets, all the plugins we had in DTM plugins repo. With this, for an example, when you utilize the plugin add asset, you will also now be able to see the group drop down over here, and you can use this to create your groups. Similarly, the asset navigator plugin has also been revamped. Now, if you try to move a wind turbine from one of the level to the another, it will now also give you a proper hint that the asset cannot be moved there because it's not part of the hierarchy model. These plugins will be very soon adopted by the other default applications such as Cockpit, and then these will replace the existing sections over there. One another functionality which we have introduced in the preview function in the public preview is the import export of the dashboards. So this will be introduced in the coming week, and this will be also introduced into a same preview public preview mode, where you will be now able to go to your dashboard settings, and in the import export have an option to export the JSON of the whole dashboard. Similarly, once you export the JSON, you can also import import the same. Not only we have enabled the import and export, we have also enabled the schema of the widgets we have in a dashboard. The schema will help us to validate the JSON when you are trying to import this. And not only the schema part, once you import the dashboard, you will also be able to match you will also be able to match the device where to the data point which you are importing into the widget. One another great enhancement which we are planning to introduce into the upcoming month is on the radial gauge widget. We are also migrating this widget from AngularJS to Angular, and apart from the performance improvement, we will be providing more configurational elements over here. One enhancement over here is availability of the presets. You can utilize the presets to have different views of the same widget. And not only this, you also have an option of changing the presets also. For an example, in this preset progress bar, I wanted to kind of make the progress bar a bit rounded. So I just copied the config and asked Gemini to help me with a config, custom config. And when I paste it back, you will be able to notice that the progress bars got rounded slightly. So similarly, you can also try out different configs for your use cases. For an example, if I have to kind of hide the date in the view, I can simply make this change in the setting, and the date will be on. So this gives you more control over the visualization of the radial gauge, and you can use this in different use cases more easily. Apart from this, one last update from my side, that in the upcoming releases, we will be upgrading onto the Angular 19. While this release brings a lot of performance improvements and new features in the framework, this might also introduce breaking changes into the existing applications you might be having. To help you with this transition, we will be providing you detailed guides and help you adapt your applications to Angular 19. So keep looking out for the this our blog post around the same in our change logs. And with this, I would now like to hand over to my colleague, Aaron.
Real quick, Rahul, thank you for the presentation. But before we turn things over to Aaron, there was a question in the chat about data point time selection, and does the time range also apply to widgets like gauges to show the last value in the selected time range?
At the moment, not. So at the moment, the global time context is supported by around 4 to 5 widgets, which is not applicable to the gauges. In the future releases, we plan to consider this update and make more and more widgets compatible with the global time context.
Okay, great. All right, we'll turn things over to Aaron then.
Thanks a lot, and also warm welcome from my side. So let's directly continue with the next topic, being the enhancements we have in device management and the context of thin edge. So the first topic I would like to speak about is the flexible payload decoding we introduced for Lightweight M2M. So Lightweight M2M comes with a standardized data model, which consists of the so-called objects and resources. And in the past, you had to map each of these resources from the Lightweight M2M data model individually to the Cumulocity data model, which makes it quite difficult if you have more complex mappings, like if you want to aggregate different values and so on. So going forward, we will leverage the MQTT service, which is currently in preview, which also will be covered by Jane later on. And we're basically dropping the payload that is collected by the Lightweight M2M agent on top of the MQTT service, which allows you to basically fetch this data using a custom microservice, decoder microservice, and that allows you to complete freedom of how you want to deal with that and decode that payload and to work with that. So you can handle that anyhow you want. The next topic I would like to cover is the software type support for device profiles. So the software type in general is a concept we introduced quite some time ago, but it was until now restricted to the software repository. So the idea was to introduce these types to differentiate between different kind of software types, so that when you upload it, you see you can more easily identify what kind of software you have in your repository. You now can also leverage this in the device profiles. So the device profiles allow you to collect basically everything you need to provision your device, be it configuration files, software files, as well as the firmware of the device. And so you have now also this entire transparency in your device profiles, and when sending down the new device profile to a device or to multiple devices, this information will also be sent as part of the operation, which also allows you to leverage this information on your device. So it's also already integrated with thin edge. So you can have this information also available on thin edge as well, providing you in general better transparency. Another improvement we did in the context of software management is the introduction of the ability to control software services remotely. So as we see the software and the workload being executed on devices at the edge is becoming more and more complex, with containerized solutions, with AI models being executed on the edge. We see also the increasing need to, of course, also manage these over their life cycle. So in the past, we already introduced capabilities to deploy software, of course, as I already mentioned, like installing, reinstalling, updating software, also to monitor software services running on your device. You can basically send any kind of metrics you want. But of course, you would also want to interact with these services in case you potentially run into an issue or you want to stop that service. And that's what you can do now. So we offer default actions, including restarting, stopping, and starting a service. But we also provide you with the full flexibility of being able to define your own commands, your own actions. So this is quite extensible and flexible framework that we introduced in order to interact with your service. You also have a dedicated command tab to see all the commands being sent to the service running on your device. also for troubleshooting cases and so on all auditing purposes. And this will, going forward, not yet, but will be also integrated with ThinEdge. So you can also leverage it, for example, in the context of the container management plugin that's available for ThinEdge. Another improvements that we did was in the context of the device map. So the device map is basically the place to go to get an overview of the geographical distribution of your deployments, see where all your devices are right now. But there were also some limitations regarding the number of devices that were visible on that map, which was restricted to 100 devices. And even with 100 devices on that map, especially with dense deployments, it's quite overwhelming visually. And you also weren't able to change the default center of the map. And that's something, all of that has been addressed now. So we overcame the limitation of the number of devices. You can define your own center. So if you have a deployment in Australia, you don't need to start in Germany, but have a direct center in the area of your deployment, and also in dense areas with a lot of devices per square meter or so. We also basically aggregate these and just show it via one marker. So it also is way more easier to consume for a user to get an overview where your devices are. The next one I'm quite excited to introduce is the pass-through functionality for cloud remote access, which is now available per default. So the the pass-through option is actually the most flexible and advanced option when it comes to cloud remote access, as it allows you to tunnel basically any TCP port to your device, to your local machine, be it an SSH server, be it a local HTTP server or a web UI. And this is now a default option that's available when using cloud remote access. So if you subscribe to the cloud remote access service. But the great thing is that this is also part of the entire chain offered by Cumulocity. So you have the local the device proxy that needs to be deployed on your device as part of ThinEdge, and also the local proxy which needs to be deployed on your machine as part of the Cumulocity CLI. So in the combination of the cloud remote access service of Cumulocity, ThinEdge, and Cumulocity CLI, you can perfectly leverage this functionality. That's it for the Q1 news. Now I want to also provide an outlook what you can expect in the next weeks and months. So in the context of cloud remote access, we have some additional functionalities or something we will introduce, which is the option to report supported protocols. So as of today, we list, as you can see here in the model you see on the right side, basically all protocols that are supported from the cloud side. However, maybe if you want to set up an endpoint, you will run into an error if this protocol isn't actually supported by the device. That's why we introduced a new smart trust template that allows you, or particularly the device, to report those protocols that it actually supports, so that only the user can only select protocols that are actually supported by the device. So per default, if nothing is sent by the device, you will see all options. But if the device supports it and reports which it actually supports, then only the supported are visible, which is also provided as part of ThinEdge context. The next one is the visibility of child devices. So devices that are not directly connected to Cumulocity, but via a gateway are modeled as so-called child devices. But other than that, they are actually just treated as devices or modeled as devices, with the small difference that they haven't had the is device fragment attached to them to differentiate between child devices and regular devices. However, this led to the situation that those devices aren't shown in the lists where devices are listed, like in the all device lists, or in the list where you select the devices, which when addressing these devices via a bulk operation. And that's why we changed this default behavior and also add the is device fragment to also child devices, so that they will also be shown in each of these device lists. But this is also an optional functionality. So if you actually don't want this fragment to be added and don't want your child device to be shown here, you also have the chance to not include the the fragment. Again, something that has also been introduced by ThinEdge, but also by the other integrations like Cloud Fieldbus and OPC-UA. And last but not least, we have a new approach to column configuration. So I already mentioned the device lists, which are quite prominent in device management. And you have the default columns, but what we now did was to, so you also can something you could already leverage was the ability to create custom columns, but where they need to define the header and the fragment path, which is quite not so straightforward to actually configure. And that's why we want to make that actually easier and leverage the digital twin manager for that, so that you can basically use the property library to model your properties so that the administrator can model the properties that then can be just selected in your columns if you want to set up custom columns. And that's basically it from the device management application side. I'm handing over to Jane to continue with the next exciting topic.
Thank you very much, Aaron. This is a bit of a glimpse of what is coming up in Q2. It's not yet available. We've been working hard on it for quite some time. What we will be providing is the ability to have a certificate signed by Cumulocity, so that now you can use certificate-based authentication, which, as we all know, is industry best practice, without having to go to the expense, time and effort of setting up your own PKI. To be very clear, this is going to be a very simple method. It will allow you to create a certificate authority on Cumulocity. You will then be able to register your device. You'll require a one-time password, and then a certificate will be created using that CA and returned to your device, and you will now be able to use certificate-based authentication for your devices. You can reissue certificates, you can disable them. So we think that this will be really good news for all of those customers who want to use certificate-based authentication, but don't have the wherewithal to actually set up their own PKI. A useful snippet is that it will also conform to EST, and I've put the full wording of that so that everybody knows what EST actually stands for. We created this capability in conjunction with our colleagues on the ThinEdge team. Ruben, can I ask you to come on stage? Because I think I'm about to hand over to you, making me panic a bit there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Ruben, who will take you through how ThinEdge uses this. We've worked very closely with our colleagues on the ThinEdge team in order to ensure that this works seamlessly if you're using ThinEdge, so that you can use ThinEdge with certificate-based authentication through to Cumulocity. Over to you, Ruben.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Let me share my screen now. So I'll try to keep this as non-technical as possible. So by all means, like, this is a fantastic feature. So we're really excited that we're able to then offer it. And so let's see it in action. So the idea is it makes onboarding devices really, really, really simple. And then in the end, you get a certificate, and everything after that happens automatically. So for ThinEdge, we'll do certificate renewal and all of that kind of stuff. So there's no more having to worry about anything like that. Okay, so I've enabled this feature already in my tenant here. So I can actually see whether I have a Cumulocity certificate authority already by looking at the trusted certificates tab here in the device management app. And then I can see here, it also has a different symbol that says, hey, I'm a CA certificate. At the beginning, this doesn't exist. So you kind of need to opt into that as soon as you have like the feature flag enabled. Click add CA certificate. There is only one CA certificate per tenant, and then I'm good to go. So how does this look in devices? So once I've all done that, the enrollment is actually quite seamless or very similar to the existing kind of functionality if you've registered devices in the past. So you can do it many different ways. So I'm just going to show you maybe a single device registration to start off with. So if I want to register a single device, we now have this option here to create a registration to get a certificate in the end. If I just type in example 5, I just chose a one-time password, which is device specific. So this is not a global Bootstrap password. This can be anything that you want, and it's only valid for this device. So once I have that, we go next. I can now see that this registration, so it's waiting for the device to connect now. So if I go to my device, because we have it tightly integrated with ThinEdge now, I can enter in the same information here, so the device ID, then my one-time password. I now have a certificate. That was it. Now I want to actually connect with such a certificate, and I'm now connected to the cloud. I didn't need to enter in any of my admin passwords because maybe I don't want to expose that to the device. I can't download the certificate again using that one-time password because it no longer exists in the platform. So I can now then navigate to my device, as I'll do for any device when I register it. And this is my device, which I'm connected to. And you may notice that there's a new tab here called X509 for X509 certificates. And here I can then see for the provisioned certificates for this device that this is the serial number, and I can see a bit of information about when it's expiring. But this is more for meta information, because ThinEdge will then install a service which then does all of this automatically. So in 90% of the situations, you don't need to do anything there. But I can just, if you want to be proactive with the renewal, just to demonstrate it, I've just renewed the certificate. Again, that's it. It's nothing really too complicated. And then in here, if I reload the list of the X509 certificates, I can then see this is the most recently issued, and this is the active certificate being used by the device. So again, very simple, it's transparent, and the integration with ThinEdge is it's quite nice. But the other kind of feature, which is fantastic, is this simplistic but secure nature to register devices. It's actually quite extendable. So in the example I showed before that I was generating this one-time password in the platform and then putting it to the device. You can actually do it the other way around as well. And so you can build this into your own kind of registration process, whether you have a Bluetooth app or something, or have a web UI, you can kind of expose that. So I just want to show this kind of how that could look in different situations. So if I have a custom registration script that I configure what tenant I want to connect to, my device ID, so I'll use something different now. Now I've decided for me, because I know my engineers actually hate typing something on the command line, but they can scan something with their phone. Or maybe in some instances, you can't scan that with your phone because maybe you don't have a QR code reader. But I can also click on the URL, which takes me to that registration page where everything's pre-filled for me. I just have to click next, I'm connected. And if we go back to the device has downloaded the certificate, it's on the connection, and then so everything's seamless, that everything has been issued to the device securely and in a simple way. So this is applicable for basically any devices. So this is part of the upcoming feature that we have in Cumulocity. Once that's delivered and you enable that, then it will also be enabled in ThinEdge. So there should be really a more pleasant onboarding and hands-off experience for ThinEdge users, so that you don't need to worry about certificate refreshing a certificate again. So if I just go back to my slides. So give me a sec. Have to find the right one. Okay, so with this, the upgrade path is seamless. Also, if you've already deployed devices with self-signed certificates, you can just renew the certificate and then use the new CA certificate functionality, and then it will just work. So there's really like, you don't need to install something apart from upgrade the thin edge version, and then it should be like hands off. So we're hoping that it should be like a very good experience for everyone. In addition, kind of like thin edge feature highlights. So we have a team of developers doing this. So we're always doing like a whole heap of new features, but there's always a lot to list. But another kind of like highlight, which is also upcoming, is the support for hardware security modules, where we can actually then read and store the private key from a certificate in a secure manner and then access it from a HSM. So most notably, we're talking about like TPM2 modules and things like that. So it's all improving our security story, both in the platform and on devices. So, and like anything thin edge, if you have any questions or feature requests, you can reach out to us on GitHub or Discord at any point in time. Great, and that concludes my part. So I guess handing over back to you, Jane, for data management.
Yes, and thank you very much indeed for demoing that so well. So we're very excited about that, and I'll be talking about it in a bit more when we get through to the next webinar. So now then, I want to leap ahead to the data management area. And something that we've been working on and delivered actually in Q1 is an extension for the Cumulocity query language. So what we've done is we've added something called is in hierarchy of. So we've had a lot of feedback to say we really would like to be able to find out what the hierarchy looks like of our devices. So to that end, you've now got this is in hierarchy of language extension. So what this means is if we take this hierarchy as our starting point, if I actually ask for the hierarchy of the group G1, which is on the left there, it will return that group and all of its descendants. Likewise, if I then say that I would like these group in hierarchy of S1, it will ignore everything apart from that group S1 and all of the devices in that group. And then just to complete the story so that you can see what happens if you just ask for the object, in this, given that hierarchy at the bottom right, if I ask for just the objects 1 and object 4, that is all that is returned. So this is quite a small piece of capability that we've delivered, but we believe that it will be really useful to you all. So we hope you like it. So that's what we've been delivering from the data at rest team. So now what I'm going to do is move on to the MQTT service. We have been talking about this for a very long time. For those of you who participated in the private preview, thank you very much for the effort and time you took for the feedback meetings, for engaging with us and providing us information on what you would actually like to see. I'm happy now to say that in Q2, and this is imminent, in much the same time frame actually as the certificate life cycle management, we will be opening up to public preview. So what have we added over and above that was available in the private preview? Well, with the public preview, you will get certificate-based authentication, as well as a monitoring and management capability. I've added a little diagram in the middle here, and those of you in the know will recognize this as immediately as a unified namespace type hierarchy. I just wanted to make it quite obvious that the fact that we haven't actually restrained you in any way on your topic structure in this MQTT service really does mean that you can look at how you want to reason about your data, how you actually want to structure how your data comes in from your MQTT devices, so that it completely matches with what you actually want to achieve as a business. And that will be available to you as part of the public preview. The public preview will need to be enabled by the operations team. So you will need to actually ask us to set this on for you. So if you are interested, please do contact Global Support and we will get that arranged for you. Moving forward and looking forward to the general availability, we hope to do this in Q3. The one piece outstanding that we have before we go to GA is we want to do device level isolation. At the moment, for the public preview, please do be aware that the data isolation is at tenant level only. So that means that any device can, on a tenant, can publish or subscribe to any topic on that tenant. The security is done at tenant level. It is not done at any more granular level than that. So for the monitoring and management capability, I'm really quite excited about this. What this will actually provide you with is the ability to look at your underlying topics and consumers that provide the basis for both the MQTT service as well as for the notification v2 API. This will enable you to see where you have consumers that are maybe not behaving very well. You'll be able to remove those consumers and thus drain down topics that are potentially full. And we've really focused on addressing those areas where we have actually seen customers get into trouble. So please be aware, we do want to do more with the monitoring and management, but we're really quite pleased with the way it's looking. And that will be as a public preview at the same time as the MQTT service. So then for the MQTT service public preview, just to reiterate, you'll be able to use certificate-based authentication. You will also have monitoring and management, which, whilst not specific to the MQTT service, because it's also available for the notification v2 API, is also very useful and should be used in conjunction with. So again, to reiterate, I've been through this before, but just in case you weren't on previous presentations, webinars, the data mapping for the MQTT service is up to the user. So you can either use an MQTT service API that we've actually provided, or there's a really rather lovely dynamic mapper that it's an open source dynamic mapper, so you can actually contribute to it as well as other engineers both within and without Cumulocity. And this is a brilliant segue to my colleague Stefan, who will take you through the dynamic mapper and show you the art of the possible with it. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Jane.
Sorry, Jane. Before we move on, just there are a couple questions in the chat. I think you might be able to address them. If registering with EST, what are the supported authentication methods?
Oh, right. I think I answered that. That was the authentication for the devices was actually covered by Ruben. You actually have to have an initial one-time password, and at that point, after you've actually been given the certificate, from that point on, it's all certificate based.
So the renewal of the certificate is then used with the JWT that you can then request from the platform using your certificate. So that's, again, stuff that ThinEdge will do out of the box, but it is not limited to ThinEdge. But all of that is actually documented in the current OpenAPI spec.
Right.
So go to the web page, right at the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the enrollment API available.
Yeah, we're a bit ahead on the open. There's also going to be some additional documentation around the whole certificate lifecycle management, because the actual product isn't available, because the feature isn't available yet, that documentation isn't yet in the standard documentation, but it will be.
Yeah, I think there's a question that maybe Stefan might be able to address quickly, but is it still the case that all users who register devices can see all devices that are currently in pending status, or do users only see devices that they themselves have registered?
I'm not sure if I can answer that.
I don't know.
So there's been no change with who can see what on the device registration page. That is remains unchanged, which I believe everyone can actually see it. But generally, it's only because you want to restrict who can register devices. So you don't want to give that privilege to everyone. So it is still an elevated privilege for people who want to register known devices.
Okay, great. And I think there's another question that we'll answer in the chat. So thank you all for the questions and for the answers.
Okay, so I go on with open source innovation. As Jane pointed out, we just saw awesome product innovation. But besides that, we also have innovation in so-called open source components. One of them we already saw. It's our biggest open source innovation, I would say, Synage. So Ruben already pointed out the highlights of the Q1 already and the outlook, what to expect for Synage. But there are a lot more components we are having in our open source space. Let me highlight a few for you. So first of all, I wanted to highlight is an open source component called Dynamic Mapper. Jane already announced it. It's mainly were developed when we first thought about MQTT service, to having a generic MQTT service where you can publish just any payload, and having the concept that you can write a microservice to do the data mapping from your legacy data format to the Cumulocity data format. And during that time, an open source project was formed so-called Dynamic Mapper. And the idea was, why not doing that in a graphical way? Yeah, and the idea is that you have just single clicks. You create a new connector coming to MQTT service, for example, just one click saying, hey, I want to connect to MQTT service. You don't have to provide anything because it's running on the same instance. Or you can use an external broker, or you can use some brokers like Kafka, or you can even use things like an HTTP endpoint to get data ingested. So this is step one. Step two is then you can snoop on the payload which is coming in. It can be some, JSON or whatever data coming in, and you're seeing what data is received. And you can select that data as so-called source templates. And just with the single clicks, you can see here highlighted in the screen, you can map your data to a target tablet, which is mainly Cumulocity format, of course. Yeah, for here in this example, we have some arbitrary payload and we're mapping it to a vibration measurement data. This was the intention of the dynamic mapper, that you don't need to write a microservice, you don't need to write code to do that, and to have it in a graphical way. So this is the first part of the dynamic mapper. And the second part, of course, is you need to manage this kind of mappings. Yeah? So once you have defined your mappings, how to map the data from any format to the Cumulocity data format, you need to manage it. So you want to activate mappings, you want to duplicate mappings and using it as a template for the NAS mapping. You want to manage the mappings for specific connectors only. All this kind of managing is also part of the dynamic mapper. Even having some monitoring capabilities that you can see, hey, my mapping is failing because some payload was received with data which was not expected. So the mapping failed. So you can see there are some errors and you need to adapt your mappings. And it was from the beginning designed to be very scalable. So we can handle thousands, millions of messages and very resource efficient in a multi-tenancy way that you can deploy it on an enterprise tenant and subscribe your subtenants to it, and you don't have to subscribe, or you have to have an instance in each tenant and running, but you can share the resources. As I said, this is all open source currently. You can access it on our GitHub account, GitHub Cumulocity IoT, and there we have the Cumulocity Dynamic Mapper. It's as I said, it's we had some major improvements in Q1, and one or few of these improvements I want to highlight now. This one should actually be hidden. Let's jump to the next one. The first one I wanted to highlight is a new feature which we called HTTP inbound processing for the dynamic mapper. As I said, of course, we can use the MQTT service, which is now in the public preview, but also we received the requirement that sometimes devices are sending requests via REST or HTTP. So therefore, we implemented a new so-called default HTTP connector, which is already part of the mapping when you deploy it already, so you don't need to configure anything. And it will provide a generic endpoint, and you can just use the generic endpoint with your custom path beyond that, sending any payload, and then it will be then available for creating your mapping. Yeah, so you have your custom payload, you just send it to the HTTP inbound, just do your mappings, and then you see your data in Cumulocity. So this is the first innovation I wanted to highlight. The second innovation I wanted to highlight is actually the other way around. Because we are not able, with the dynamic mapper, we cannot only process incoming data, but we can also send data coming from Cumulocity to some other system or device if you want to. And here we have enhanced a new feature we called webhook support. Here we have defined a new connector of type webhook. You can configure it with a custom endpoint or system or whatever. You need to provide, or if it's a secured endpoint, you need to provide the credentials. So this is the connector configuration. And then you do the vice versa mapping. Yeah, you're saying, okay, now I'm receiving a measurement from Cumulocity. I do the mapping. I assign it to my webhook, and the webhook will take care that the data is sent out to any system if you like, of anything you can imagine, if it's supporting some custom HTTP endpoint. So it's the second innovation. The third innovation of the mapper I wanted to highlight we did in the Q1 was that we received the feedback the visual mapping is good. The expression language we're using there is also good, but sometimes for very complex mappings, I would wish that we have some simple script language where we can do the mapping. So what we have done is we have implemented code-based mapping. So you can decide on when you create a new mapping that you say, okay, now I want to have a visual mapping, or I use the code-based mapping. And what you get if you select your code-based mapping is in plain JavaScript. Yeah? So we're providing a function which is called extract from source. Then you get the context of the message which is received, or the source template actually, and what it is expected that you do the mapping with your JavaScript code, and in the end you need to return result with all the mappings and replacements and so on. So this is the code-based mappings. Herefore, we implemented some templates. So inbound mappings, outbound mappings, we have a concept like shared code. So for example, you have some common functions, decoding functions, which is used across multiple mappings. Then we have a function called shared code. You can put that function in there, and in your mappings, you can just call that function, which is defined in the shared code. So this is an, I would say, quite big improvement we did. The second improvement, or the fourth improvement of the dynamic mapper I wanted to highlight, is advanced message filtering. We received the feedback that, okay, I have a topic now where data is sent, or the path in the HTTP inbound case, but sometimes I do not want to process all the data, because sometimes it's the same topic, but the payload looks differently. And I need to filter out the data. So what we have implemented is so-called message filtering. So on the source template, you can decide with an expression language if this mapping should be executed or not. In this example, you can say, okay, so this mapping to be executed, a temperature fragment must exist, or temperature object must exist in the payload, and the value of the temperature must be bigger than 50. So all messages where the temperature is below 50 will be dropped, and will not be mapped, but all the messages for temperature values for higher will be mapped. So this is the first improvement for the advanced message filtering, but also received feedback, hey, it would be nice if we would just create measurements, but sometimes the measurements are related to the device where the measurement should be sent to, especially for the outbound part sometimes. So can we also filter on some fragments on the device? So we have some inventory filter also that you can define and saying, okay, I want this filter for the message, but also only for devices of type LoRa device type in this example. Yeah, and this is working in both directions, inbound and outbound. So you can define that filter for incoming message and messages coming out of Cumulocity sending to somewhere else. So this is the first component I wanted to highlight, dynamic mapper. I would ask you to try it and give feedback. It's an open source project, so you can just write issues if you find something. The second component I wanted to highlight as an open source innovation is the field service management. The field service management is a microservice and some UI plugin that allows you to connect Cumulocity Cockpit with existing field service management solutions. Yeah, so the microservice can connect to a field service management solutions, or if you don't have a field service management solution in place which you want to connect to it, also provides a very basic field service management capabilities that you can create service requests in the cockpit, and then it will be stored in Cumulocity, and you can handle it and have some kind of process. The innovation in Q1 was actually that we introduced a new component as an analytics builder blocks, which is now available also open source, and you can use that. So as I said, in the first you could use in the cockpit, you have a plugin where you can manually create the service request. And the new innovation is now that you can automatically do that with using analytics builder. On an alarm or on some threshold values, you can automatically create a field service request using the analytics builder blocks. So this was the second innovation I wanted to highlight. And the last innovation I wanted to highlight open source is a very common and well-accepted tool, which was mainly developed by Ruben. It's called the Cumulocity CLI. In Q1, we had major improvements here with 2 releases. I wanted to highlight a few new features we had here. The first one we already saw is that we have in Cumulocity now, I would say, big game changer in how we can register devices, and the CLI has been adapted accordingly. So you can not only register devices using username and password, but also, of course, certificate-based, but also, of course, using the Cumulocity certificate-based authentication. So the CLI has been adapted. Then there was a new feature that you can easily change the toggles between, for some features we're using toggles, feature toggles. Here we have now support in the CLI that you can easily use that. For the better error handling, it was improved that now full errors are printed out if we have some issues, so for easier troubleshooting. Also, we had a new innovation that the tenant management, especially for enterprise tenant, where you want to add or remove tenants, disabling tenants, there was quite a big improvement how you can do that also using the CLI, but not in the user interface. And of course, there will be a lot of user experience refinements, documentation fixes, and so on. If you haven't used it, I strongly suggest to try it out. It's a very powerful tool. Aaron also mentioned that we have a full local proxy install, part of this Go CLI for the remote access. There you can very awesome stuff with the Cumulocity CLI. That's all from my side. Do you have any questions for the open source innovation?
Hey, Stefan, it looks like we have one question that's come up in the chat, but asking, is it now possible to attach binaries such as images to events as attachments through the mapper?
Yeah, we had this requirement already in the past. We have that in our backlog, but it hasn't been implemented yet, unfortunately. But we have still this, it's in our backlog.
Okay, so it's still on the backlog for the roadmap. All right, great. Yeah, then I think we can turn things over to Tal to close us out.
Hey folks, I'm here to talk about everyone's favorite topic, usage statistics and billing. I know all of you are super thrilled to talk about billing. It's everyone's favorite topic. Just some quick updates for you on this front before we turn it over to a larger Q&A and wrap up our webinar here today. I just want to tell you more about the usage statistics application. So about a year ago, we released a preliminary version of the usage statistics app, which really helps with a lot of the transparency relating to how Cumulocity bills each and every one of you, right? We had a per tenant view, so you could get all of your different usage statistics and metrics in one place centrally in your use of Cumulocity. We've kind of refreshed and renovated the usage statistics app based on your feedback to provide a little bit more utility and usefulness directly for each and every one of you, right? So the things that we've added are multi-tenant aggregation. So all of you, for the most part, use many different tenants within Cumulocity, and now you can use the usage statistics app to do, and analyze your statistics across all of your deployed tenants, right? Previously, it was just a single tenant. Now you can do it on your parent tenant. You deploy the application, you can get the aggregate statistics across all of your tenants, right? The other big piece of feedback that we heard is the month-to-day metrics, right? Previously, we didn't have the ability to do current month metrics. So it's April 10th, for example, right? In the older version of the app, you wouldn't get an understanding of what are my April metrics looking like, right? You could only retroactively look at previous months for all of these statistics. So we've completely refreshed and renovated the usage statistics app based on your feedback to be more useful for each and every one of you, right? I'm going to show you in just a second how it all works and what you can see, but that QR code gives you the installation instructions. How we did this is there's a backend microservice, and don't worry, speaking as a billing guy, you won't be charged for this microservice when you deploy it, right? So simply all you need to do is take that microservice, deploy it on your parent tenant, and then deploy the UI either through the Blueprints feature or directly as a web app upload, right? So once you have that in place, I'll show you what it now looks like. So let me stop the slides and share my screen. Cool. So here we are in Cumulocity. This is one of our testing tenants, and you can see this is the new usage statistics app. It sits right within my app switcher here, and you can see we've got a completely refreshed set of visuals with all of the new updates, right? We have our last month snapshots. I'll use a monthly snapshot across all tenants that sit within this tenant and its tenants, this tenant itself. So this is a parent tenant, and I can show you that if we go down to individual device statistics, you can see the tenant hierarchy here, right? So what the app is now doing is it's collecting data from all of these tenants and summing them up and providing this aggregation job that you see here, right? That's over here on the left. You get that last month snapshot. You can see your device classes. You can see all of the metrics relating to, Cumulocity billing, right? Over here on the right, this is where I mentioned that month to day. So this is, data from April 1st through April 9th. You can see how is my month looking? What does it look like? Are there any anomalies? Just by looking at this, I like this example because last month we had over 3,000 Class A devices, right? And just so this far into April, we have only got 100. So what's going on there? Evidently, someone turned off some devices or some simulators or something happened there that could be used for investigation purposes, right? The rest of the app functions in a very similar way. You can still, as I just showed, view a per tenant basis of each of your individual metrics for devices, for microservice, and for tenants. And you can dive into the details on each of these, right? So one of the cool things that we have added is when you do select a tenant, this link will take you directly to that tenant, the device details on that tenant. Now, of course, if you don't have a login for that tenant, you may be presented with an authentication page. But in theory, if you have a login for all of your individual subtenants, you can just click through directly to each one of these tenants, or each one of these devices on those tenants, and get a view over what's going on, right? So again, how this all works is there's a backend microservice that you need to deploy on the parent tenant by which you want to view statistics on. You should use this at your highest tier of tenant, so that's your management tenant or your tier 2 tenant, and then it will aggregate all tenants below that and then give you the statistics in an aggregated way. right? So I'll quickly show, this is the tech community post, which goes through all of the installation instructions here. That's the QR code you saw on the slide previously. And of course, we'll send this link around. You can find it everywhere. So please begin to use this. We really want to increase the transparency that we're giving you in terms of how Cumulocity bills you. And we think this is a really great improvement in that direction. I do also want to give a special shout out to on our team, Mark Rostoffel, who has been the primary architect behind all of this. He's done some really amazing work kind of enabling this app for you to really increase the amount of transparency that you get. So I will stop sharing my screen and get back to them slides. So here, again, if you want to scan that QR code, that's all the information that you need. Again, you won't be billed for that microservice when you deploy it. Some final wrap-up slides. I just had the one slide in the live demo for you. Your feedback matters. We want to hear all of your feedback, right? Part of the reason we're doing these webinars is to collect your feedback, answer your questions, talk to you directly. We have a feedback portal where you can go and you can submit feedback directly to us, feature requests, anything you want to talk about with us. This is a feedback portal that's set up exactly for that. We as the PM and the ecosystem team, we monitor this daily. We respond to people. We really want to make this as collaborative as we possibly can to build the best product for you, right? So please make use of this feedback portal. We want to hear you. We want to understand what you need out of Cumulocity so that we can align our roadmaps and build the best possible product for you. If you can't scan the QR code, that's okay. You can find it linked on our website. It's cumulocity.com/feedback. Really easy. And lastly, help us improve. I don't know, Alex, if it's already appeared for these people, but at the end of the webinar, there will be a survey that pops up on your screen. Please do go ahead and fill that out. We are, working on these webinars. We want to make them as useful as possible for you. So if you fill out that survey, it'll help us get the feedback we need to make this as useful to you as we can.
Yep, that survey is launched now. You should see that in the engagement screen. So yes, again, thank you very much for attending today. Thank you to everyone for the great questions. And certainly we look forward to making these sessions as powerful for you as possible. So any feedback you can offer is very, very appreciated. Thank you all very much. And I think we'll go ahead. Oh, it sounds like there's some additional questions in the chat.
Yep. So Benjamin asks, how exactly does the month-to-date work? Is it an average is calculated and the devices are grouped accordingly? If a device stops sending a message, will it then be downgraded as well? Yes. So it is so all the device class calculation is done on a daily average. That's the billing metric that we use. So of course, that month today is largely just an estimate based off of how many days have data been present, right? So for example, all those device classes you just saw were calculated over the first 9 days. Of course, things may change because the actual calculation is done over 30 days, right? So we're taking that daily data and giving you an estimated average. It may or may not be reflective of your end billing at the end of the month, but we wanted to give you some indication over what it could be, right? If you have a device that sends data for the first 9 days that appeared in there and then doesn't send any data for the rest of the month, of course, that will drop because it is a daily average over the entire month that determines the device class. So you're 100% correct. It is an estimation based off of the current set of days in the month.
Great. All right. Well, that looks like all of the questions. So again, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one of these sessions in July.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.